beautiful people, welcome to Remi's Fashion. My name is Remi. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to draft a corset pattern with Basque effect. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out my starting point. I always like to have a starting point. So I'm going to draw out a starting point and I'll draw a line like this. So this starting point, I'm going to name my starting point my shoulder line. This is going to be my shoulder line. And then this is going to be my center front. So I'm going to be drafting my pattern from the center front towards the side front. So the first thing I'm going to do is to measure out my vertical measurements. That's from my shoulder to my bust, shoulder to my under bust, shoulder to my waist, and then shoulder to the length of my corset top. So from my shoulder to my bust, mine is 12 inches. So I'm just going to take my measurement from my shoulder line. 12 inches puts me here, I'll mark. From my shoulder to my under bust is 16 inches. So I will mark 16 inches. Shoulder to my waist is 19 inches. And then I'm going to make the length of my top to be 24 inches. So that when I'm drawing out the Basque effect, it will come out well. So 24 inches puts me here, I'll mark. I'll do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm just going to rule a horizontal line across. So I'm just going to label them. This is my shoulder line, so I put SL. This is my bust line, under bust line, waistline, and then hem line. So I just label them with the abbreviations. So the next thing I need to do now is to measure my shoulder measurement on my shoulder line. So whatever your shoulder measurement is, divide it by 2 and then plot it on your shoulder line. Mine is 18, divided by 2 is going to give me 9 inches. So I'm going to measure 9 inches on my shoulder line and I'll mark. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot in my neck line. That's the neck width and the neck depth. Even though for this pattern, we're not going to be using it, but I'm going to do it so that you can follow along. So I'm going to be using the standard measurement of 3 inches by 3 inches. So 3 inches depth and 3 inches width. And then I'm going to connect. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, on my shoulder line, I'm going to slope my shoulder by 1 inch because our shoulders are not straight. So from that, my shoulder line, I'll slope it down like this by 1 inch. And from this 1 inch, I'm going to connect to my neck width. The next thing I need to do now is to draw out my armhole line. So the way to get that is take your bust circumference measurement, divide it by 6 and add 1.5 inch. And mine, after calculation, is 9 inches. So I'm going to measure 9 inches from my shoulder slope and I will mark. And then I will draw a horizontal line across. And this line here is my chest line. The next thing I need to do now is I'm going to bring down this armhole line down to the chest line like this. In order to draw out the curve, I'm going to measure it. Whatever yours is, you take the midpoint. So half of it. So mine is 9 inches divided by 2 is 4.5. So I'll mark. From this midpoint, I'm going to go in by half an inch. I'm going to measure half an inch inwards like this and I will mark. And then, in order to draw out the armhole curve, we will need our bust circumference measurement, which you're going to be plotting on the chest line. My bust circumference is 44 inches. So divided by 4 is going to give me 11 inches. So I'm going to measure 11 inches on my chest line. That puts me here, I'll mark. And then, to draw the curve now, I'm going to connect from here to this midpoint to my bust circumference on the chest line like this. So this is my armhole curve. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to draw out our dart. I'm going to be using my nipple to nipple measurement. So whatever your nipple to nipple measurement is, divide it by 2 and use that. So mine is 9 inches divided by 2 is going to give me 4.5 inches. So I measure 4.5 inches. I will mark on here. That's 4.5. On here on the bust line, I'm going to go down by 1 inch and I'll mark. And then I'll measure the 4.5 on my under bust, on my waistline, and on my hem line. And then I'll connect all the points with a straight line. So the next thing I'm going to do is on the waistline, I'm going to open up the dart by half an inch on both sides. So that's a total of 1 inch. And then I'll connect upwards. And then I'm going to draw out the dart legs. I'll connect from the top to this half an inch. I'll do the same thing on the other side and at the bottom. And then I'll draw the dark legs downwards, like this. So this is my dart. So the next thing I'm going to do is on the shoulder line. So I'm going to take the midpoint of this shoulder line, this one here. So the midpoint, half of it is, so you can do your tape like this. And then this is the midpoint for me. I'll mark. And then I'll connect from here to my dart. Like this. So the next thing is on this under bust line, I'm going to be doing the under bust tightening. And then for me, I'm going to be using 0.75. That's 3/4 inches on both sides. If you're not too busty, you can use 1/2 inch. So on the under bust from here, I'm going to measure 0.75 on each side. And then I'll draw a straight line all the way down to the hemline. I'll do the same thing for the other side. And then I'll use a curve, and then I'm going to connect to my bust point like this. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Just connect upwards like this. So the next thing you need to do is on the chest line, I'm going to go up by 1 inch because now we want to draw out our cups. So depending on how covered you want your bra cups to be, so you can decide to do more or you do less. So I'm going to be doing 1 inch upwards. So I'm going to measure 1 inch upwards, and then I'll draw a straight line to connect. Like this. So the next thing we need to do now is to measure what the amount of dart we have on the under bust, and then we're going to transfer that dart to the top. That's the 1 inch that we went up. So I'm going to measure my dart. So my dart is 2 inches. So I'm going to be measuring the 2 inches on this part, and then because it's 2 inches, I'm going to share it on both sides. The side towards the side front we have more, and then the side towards the center front we have less. So because mine is 2 inches, I'm going to allocate 0.75 the side towards the center front. 0.75 I will mark. And then the side towards the side front, I'm going to give it 1.25 inch. This is 1/4, and this side will be 3/4. So 1/4 plus 3/4, that's going to give me 2 inches. Just to avoid gaping on the yoke, I'm going to be removing another 1/4 on each side. So I've measured another 1/4 on this side from here to here, 1/4, and then here as well. And then I'm going to connect. So I'm going to be drawing out my dart to meet my bust point. So I'll do the same thing on this side as well. Like this. After doing this, looking at this, you can see that this is longer than this side. This side is definitely longer. It's always longer than this side. So in order for you not to have problems when you're joining it, take your measurement, take the length of this one, whatever the difference is, you add it to the top of that one. So I'm going to measure. Mine on here is 5 inches, and then from here to here is 4.5 inches. I'm just going to add 1/2 inch. And then I'll connect it like this. So after doing that, so the next thing I'm going to do is on the chest line. This is my chest line. So the space, I'm going to go in by 1/2 inch, and that's the space between our two busts. So I'm going to go in by 1/2 inch, and I will mark. So this is my 1/2 inch. I'm going to connect from this point to this point using my curve ruler, and then from here to the under bust here. And then I'm going to connect using my curve. So I'll now connect the top to the 1/2 inch that we went in. Like this. From the 1/2 inch that we went in, I'm going to connect to under the bust. Like this. So this is the first cup. After drafting this first cup, we're going to draft the second cup now. So the next thing we're going to do is to draft out the second cup. So to do that, you see this armhole line and the armhole curve. You measure it, whatever you have. You take the midpoint, half of it. The midpoint is here for me. So this is the midpoint. I'm going to go down by 1/2 inch from that midpoint, 1/2 inch downwards. And then I will draw a horizontal line outwards from that point. And then I'm going to connect with a curve from here to this 1/2 inch. Like this. And then from here now, I'm going to connect to the under bust. And then I'll draw all the way to under the bust. Like this. So these are my cups. This is cup 1 and this is cup 2. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to plot in my circumference measurements. After drafting both cups, so the next thing is to plot in my circumference measurement. So I'm going to start with the chest line. My bust circumference measurement is 11 inches after calculation. So it's 44 inches divided by 4. It's going to give me 11 inches. So on my chest line, this is 11 inches. Remember when I was trying trying to draft the armhole curve, I had inputted it before. So that's it there. And then I'm going to measure out my dart. So this is my dart now. Mine is 2 inches. I'm going to add it back to on here. That's 2 inches on here. And then I'm going to be adding 1 inch sewing allowance. The next one is my waist circumference measurement. So my waist circumference is 38 inches divided by 4 is 9.5 inches. So after calculation is 9.5. So on the waistline, I'm going to measure 9.5 inches and I'll mark. And then I'm going to measure out my dart. So whatever your dart is, measure it out and then add it on here. Mine is 2 inches. I've added it and then I'm going to add my 1 inch sewing allowance. So I'll do the same thing for my hemline, which is the length of my top. My hip circumference measurement is 11.75 after calculation. So I'm just going to measure 11.75. I'll plot it in here and then I'll measure out my dart. So whatever yours is, add it on here. So my dart is 2 inches and then I'll add 1 inch sewing allowance. And that's my 1 inch. And then the next thing is to connect my points. I'll connect from here to here. And then from here to my waistline. I will label my pattern. So this is cup 1 and then this is cup 2. So just make sure you label it. You can put center front here, CF, so that you know that this is the cup for your center front. And then this side is your side front. I'll do that. And then these two are going to be connected like this. So now we cut out our pattern. So mind you, the only sewing allowance I added is on the side. So I haven't added on any of my top. So the next thing we need to do now is to cut out our pattern. So this is that area. I'm going to cut them out. So we just need this and then the bottom. So these are my front pieces. So I'm going to join this and this together. So I have one front piece. So this is my center front and this is my side front. I'm just going to join them together so that we have one piece. So this is our front pattern. This is our cups. So to get the bust effect from the waistline, I'm going to go down by 2 inches. And then from here, I'll just connect down here. You can use a curve to do your connection. Like this. So after measuring 2 inches and then drawing my slant line, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off now. So this is our basque. You can make yours longer. It depends on how long you want yours to be. You can make it longer than mine. And these are my cups. This is center front and then this is side front. Like this. So these are the front patterns with the basque shape corset top. Don't forget, I only added sewing allowance on the side. So this is center front. This is going to be on fold. We've already added sewing allowance here. So we're going to be adding hem allowance. And then round our bust cups, we're going to be adding sewing allowance all round this one as well. Except if you're going to be sewing them together using a zigzag stitch, then you don't have to add sewing allowance on the inside. The next thing we need to do now is to draft our back pattern. So after finishing the front, for the back, I've gone ahead and I've drawn out all our lines, just like we did for the front. And I've done the armhole as well. This is just for beginners in our midst to follow along with what I'm doing. You don't need this at all, except if you want a yoke. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we're not doing a yoke, okay? Start doing all this. The next thing is to measure out our nipple to nipple measurement. My nipple to nipple measurement is 4.5 inches. And then don't forget to label. This is my chest line. This is my bust line. And then this is my waistline. This is my shoulder line. And then for you to get the length, this is for the front. All you need to do is measure the length that is on the front. Here, this is the length, which is 2 inches. From the waist down, I'm going to measure 2 inches down. We don't want the basque effect at the back. We just want it in front. So from the waist down is 2 inches. So I'm going to measure 2 inches down from the waist and I'll mark. And then I'll just draw a horizontal line to connect my points. So So after doing that, the next thing we need to do now is to measure out our nipple to nipple measurement. My nipple to nipple measurement is 4.5 inches. And I'm going to take that from my chest line, bust line, waistline, and then the length line. So from the bust line is 4.5 inches. I'll mark. And I'm going to go down by 1 inch. And then on the bust line is 4.5 inches. I'm going to measure 4.5 inches on all my lines. And I'll draw a vertical line to connect my points. And on the waistline, I'm going to be taking out a dart of 1 inch. That is half an inch on each side of the waistline. And then I'll draw my dart legs. So after doing that, the next thing I need to do now is to plot in my circumference measurement. And my bust circumference measurement is 44 inches. By the time I divide it by 4, it's going to give me 11 inches. So 11 inches is on here. I've already plotted that, which I used in drafting out our armhole curve. So for my waistline, my waist circumference measurement is 38 inches. And by the time I divide that by 4, it's going to give 9.5 inches. And I'll measure. 9.5 inches puts me here. And then I'll measure out my dart. I took out a 1 inch dart. So I'm going to plot it back. So 1 inch puts me here. And then for my length line, I'm going to be plotting in my hip circumference measurement. My hip circumference measurement is 47 inches. And by the time I divide that by 4, it's going to give me 11.75. So I'm going to measure 11.75 inches on the length line. I'll mark here. And then I'll connect all my points together. So we're not using a zipper. I'm going to be using eyelets. So I'm going to be putting eyelets on here. So for the back, I'm going to extend this up because I'm going to be cutting out this dart completely. You can decide you want the back slanted, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to leave it straight. So this is my center back and this is my side. So I'm going to measure, I'm going to be taking 1.5 inch. Remember that if I'm taking 1.5 inch, that means 1.5 inch on one side and 1.5 inch on the other side. That's the total of 3 inches. If you're doing 2 inches, just be mindful that it's going to be 4 inches that you're taking out. Okay? So I'm taking 1.5. I'll mark and I'll measure 1.5 as well down here. And then I'll connect. Even with this one as well, you can still decide you want it slanted. Maybe you take 1.5 at the top and take 1 inch or half an inch at the bottom. But I'm going to be leaving mine straight. So we're going to be cutting off this part. So our loops are going to be here. So this is the back pattern. This is going to be cut off. So we're going to cut off this one and then cut off this one. So the back is very easy. So the next thing you need to do now, don't forget to add 1 inch on the side, because we did that for the front. So add 1 inch. That's 1 inch sewing allowance. Whatever you do for the front, do it to the back as well. So that's my 1 inch. So that's my 1 inch sewing allowance. So the next thing we need to do now is cut out this pattern. Like I said, you can decide you want to slant the top. It's up to you. And then you can decide you want to increase this one. But this is how I'm going to leave in mine. So I'll now cut out this pattern now. I'm going to be cutting out this part as well. So this is the center back. Okay, back pattern. That's the CB. And we're going to be cutting out 2 of this. Cut 2. This is side back. We're going to be cutting out 2 of this as well. So these are the back pieces. So these are the front pieces. 1 and 2, and then these are the back pieces. And then you can see this is the back and the front. See, you can see it matches. This one doesn't have basque, but there's basque on here. So these are our pattern pieces for our corset top with basque. So with these, we have come to the end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not done so already. Give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next tutorial. Take care and God bless.